From the moment we are born, we are shaped by external expectations, our parents, society, culture. Everyone tells us who we should be, how we should act, and what we should pursue in order to be happy. But at some point, have you ever wondered if the life you're living is truly yours? Or if you're just following a script imposed by others? Jung teaches us that the greatest tragedy in life is not failing to meet other people's standards, but never discovering who we truly are. And the truth is, many live for years, decades, even an entire lifetime without ever finding themselves. They get lost trying to please, trying to fit in, trying to meet expectations that were never theirs to begin with. The price of this? An empty existence, a constant feeling that something is missing, even when everything on the surface seems fine. The restlessness, the unexplained anxiety, the emotional exhaustion, these are all signs from the unconscious, trying to wake you up, trying to remind you that there's something within you that needs to be heard. But the problem is, most people don't want to listen. They'd rather run. They drown that inner calling in distractions, social media, empty relationships, exhausting work. And for a while it works. They convince themselves that the restlessness will pass, that it's just a phase. But the soul cannot be silenced forever. At some point, the truth always comes to the surface. Jung spoke of the shadow, that hidden side of our psyche that holds everything we deny about ourselves, our fears, our wounds, our traumas, everything we avoid facing. But what few people understand is that the shadow doesn't disappear just because we pretend it doesn't exist. On the contrary, it grows and manifests itself in our relationships, in our destructive patterns, in the feeling that something is wrong, but we can't quite put our finger on it. The path to true transformation begins when we stop running, when we have the courage to look inward and acknowledge what is there. It's not a comfortable process. Facing yourself means dismantling all the masks we wear to protect ourselves. But only in that confrontation do we discover who we truly are. Jung said that to become who you are, you must let go of who you think you should be. That means letting go of expectations, abandoning the need for approval, and above all, learning to trust yourself. But how do you trust yourself when your whole life you've been taught to seek answers outside of you? How do you free yourself from a system that conditioned you to believe that you'll only be happy when you attain something external? The answer is within. It always has been. The great illusion of modern society is making us believe that happiness is outside of us, that we need to reach perfect relationships to finally feel whole. But that pursuit never ends, because as long as you're not aligned with yourself, there will always be a void. Jung teaches that true fulfillment comes when we stop searching outside and begin to look within. That means asking yourself, who am I beyond the expectations placed on me? What truly makes me happy? Beyond what society says should make me happy. What parts of myself have I ignored, repressed, or silenced to please others? The journey of choosing yourself is not easy. It requires courage. It requires self-knowledge. It requires facing truths that may hurt. But it's the only journey truly worth taking. Because at the end of it, you don't find an external prize or a fleeting validation. You find yourself. And when you find yourself, something magical happens. You begin to see the world differently. People who once drained you, manipulated you, or used you begin to lose their power over you. Situations that once made you suffer no longer impact you in the same way. And life begins to align in a nearly inexplicable way. This is not coincidence. It's synchronicity. Jung said that when we are in alignment with who we truly are, the universe responds. You attract experiences and people that are on the same frequency, who resonate with your truth. But for that to happen, you must make a decision. Are you ready to choose yourself? When you choose yourself, there is a moment of silence, a space between who you were and who you are becoming. That space can be uncomfortable because you no longer have the same distractions, the same excuses, the same false securities. It's as if the ground beneath your feet vanished for a moment. and you had to trust something beyond logic to keep walking. But it is in that space that transformation happens, because for the first time, you are free. Free from the expectations that suffocated you, free from the relationships that drained you, free from the illusions that made you believe you needed something outside of yourself to feel complete. And in that emptiness, you begin to truly meet yourself. You realize that much of what you believed yourself to be was nothing more than conditioning. You realize that many of your fears were never really yours, just reflections of insecurities absorbed from the world around you. You realize your essence was always there, but buried under layers and layers of limiting beliefs. Little by little, you begin to rebuild your identity, but this time with awareness. You learn to say yes only to what resonates with your truth. You learn to walk away without guilt from everything that doesn't nourish your soul. You learn to value your energy, your time, your presence. And then you notice something that changes everything. When you choose yourself, you become magnetic. People begin to notice something different about you. Your presence becomes stronger, your energy more intense. That happens because you are no longer fragmented. You're no longer splitting your attention between who you are and who others want you to be. You have become whole, and the world responds to that. Opportunities appear. People begin to see you in a new light. Doors that once seemed locked open effortlessly. But this is not luck. It's not coincidence. It's the natural consequence of someone aligned with their truth. But not everyone will accept this new version of you. Some people will try to pull you back into the old pattern. They will try to convince you that you're being selfish, that you're withdrawing without reason. This happens because your change becomes a mirror for those who have not yet had the courage to change. And you need to be prepared for that, because when you choose yourself, you inevitably leave behind everything that no longer matches your new vibration. This means letting go of friendships that no longer make sense, distancing yourself from environments that once felt comfortable, releasing relationships that no longer reflect who you are. And this part of the process can be painful because there's grief involved. You're not just leaving behind people or situations. You're leaving behind an old version of yourself, and that version, however limited it may have been, was still familiar. But you need to trust that what lies ahead is far greater than what you're leaving behind. Trust that this process, however challenging, is leading you to a place where your soul can finally breathe. Because that's what happens when you choose yourself. You stop surviving and start living. When you begin to live for yourself, not for others, something extraordinary happens. You become aware of your own freedom. For the first time, you realize you don't need permission to be who you are. You don't need to justify your desires. You don't need to explain your choices. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. It may sound simple, but it's not. Because we've spent our entire lives being conditioned to believe that our worth depends on the approval of others. From a young age, we learn that being good means pleasing others, that being kind means being quiet, that being accepted means shaping ourselves to meet external expectations. But Jung teaches us that true maturity begins when we stop seeking approval and start granting ourselves permission, when we understand that we don't need to be understood by everyone, when we accept that our journey is unique and not everyone will be able to see the transformation we're living. At that point, something profound shifts within you. You realize that the loneliness that once scared you now feels like peace. You discover that the silence that once felt uncomfortable is now sacred space. You reconnect with yourself. You realize you no longer need to chase anything to feel complete, not even your own truth, because you are your truth. And that's when your true power reveals itself. Because when you choose yourself, you become unstoppable. Nothing can manipulate you anymore. No opinion can destabilize you. No rejection can shake you, because your validation no longer comes from outside. It comes from within. And when that happens, you become the owner of your life. You stop accepting crumbs. You stop settling for less. You stop staying in places and relationships that shrink you. You begin to demand more, not because you are arrogant, but because you finally understand your worth. But that awareness comes with weight, because along with freedom comes responsibility. Now you can no longer blame others for your unhappiness. You can no longer pretend you're trapped when, in truth, you hold the key in your own hands. You have to take full responsibility for your life, for your choices, for your path. And that can be frightening, because it's much easier to blame the world, destiny, or circumstances. But that's the great difference between those who awaken and those who remain asleep. Those who awaken understand that everything that happens is a reflection of their inner state. Jung called this projection. Everything you see in the external world, the people who trigger you, the situations that challenge you, the patterns that keep repeating, are mirrors of what still needs to be healed within you. This means that unless you change internally, your reality will stay the same. You can change cities, jobs, relationships, but if you don't change yourself, you'll keep encountering the same problems disguised as new situations. And that's the hardest part to accept, because it means that if there's something in your life causing you pain, it's not the world's fault. It's a reflection of what you haven't healed within yourself. But that's also the most liberating part, because it means you have the power to change everything, that your happiness depends on no one but you, that your destiny is in your hands. And when you understand that, you are never the same again, because for the first time, you realize you need nothing more than your own awareness to transform your life. When you realize that you have the power to transform your life, everything changes. You no longer wait for something external to happen in order to be happy. You no longer place your peace in someone else's hands. You no longer seek validation where there's nothing to be found. You understand that everything you need is already within you, and that gives you a freedom that few people ever experience. Because now, you no longer live to meet other people's expectations. You don't stay in relationships that don't uplift you. You don't shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. But the most interesting part is that when you choose yourself, your energy shifts, and the world responds to that change. You begin to attract people who vibrate on the same frequency. Situations that once seemed impossible begin to unfold. What used to be an unmovable obstacle now dissolves naturally. This isn't magic. It isn't luck. It isn't coincidence. It's the natural result of someone who is living in alignment with their truth. And if you've made it this far, if something inside you felt that this message was meant for you, don't ignore it, because nothing happens by accident. Maybe this is the confirmation you've been waiting for. Maybe this is the sign. The universe is sending you to finally make that decision you've been putting off. So I invite you to do something right now. Choose yourself. Make a decision that puts you first. It can be something small. It can be symbolic, but do it. Because every choice you make affirms your truth to the world. And if this message resonated with you, share it with someone else who needs to hear this. Leave your comment below. Tell me what touched your heart the most. What part made you reflect? Let's spread this transformation to as many people as possible. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here we talk about awakening, about transformation, about everything that can take you to a deeper level of consciousness. Because the world needs more awakened people. The world needs more people who choose themselves. The world needs you. And the best way to begin this change is by sharing this message. Because when you spread this knowledge, you not only transform your own life, but also the lives of those around you. So tell me, what are you going to do today to choose yourself? Write it in the comments. Engage with this content, and let's bring this message to as many people as we can. I'll see you in the next video, but before you go, remember this. You don't need permission to be who you truly are. Just choose yourself.